the clever puppy, and the kind young man. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and a sparkling river, a little puppy named Bruno lived with his mother, Luna. Luna was a loving and protective mother, always guiding Bruno and his siblings around the village, teaching them how to find food and avoid danger. One day, while searching for food near the forest's edge, Luna was startled by a loud noise. Before she could react, a speeding bicycle came rushing down the hill, and the rider lost control. The bike crashed into Luna, sending her tumbling onto the rocky path. She yelped in pain, her leg badly injured. The rider, frightened, quickly got up and ran away, leaving Luna behind. Bruno, who had been playing nearby, rushed to his mother's side. She whimpered, unable to stand. Panic filled Bruno's tiny heart. He knew he had to do something, but what?
He was just a small puppy.
Then, an idea struck him. He had often seen a kind young man named Daniel in the village who helped animals. Daniel worked at a small animal clinic and always fed stray dogs. If anyone could help Luna, it was him. Bruno wasted no time. He barked at his siblings, signaling them to stay with their mother. Then, he dashed off towards the village, his tiny paws thudding against the dusty road. As he reached the village, he saw Daniel sitting outside his house, reading a book. Bruno ran straight to him, barking frantically and tugging at his pants with his little teeth. Daniel looked down, surprised. "Hey, little guy, what's wrong?" he asked gently. But Bruno didn't stop. He pulled harder and then ran a few steps away, looking back at Daniel as if pleading him to follow. Daniel noticed the urgency in Bruno's eyes. "Do you want me to follow you?" he asked. Bruno wagged his tail and barked again. That was all Daniel needed. He quickly grabbed his bag and followed the determined puppy. Bruno led Daniel all the way to the forest's edge, where Luna lay whimpering in pain. Daniel's heart ached at the sight. He knelt beside her, gently checking her injury. "You're a brave little one," Daniel said, patting Bruno's head. "Don't worry, I'll take care of your mom." Carefully, Daniel wrapped Luna's injured leg and carried her back to his clinic. He cleaned her wounds, gave her medicine, and made sure she was comfortable. Bruno never left his mother's side, his tiny eyes filled with gratitude. Days passed and Luna slowly recovered. Thanks to Bruno's quick thinking and Daniel's kindness, she could walk again. The village people, hearing the story, praised the clever puppy who had saved his mother. From that day on, Bruno and Luna became part of Daniel's family, living happily in the village. And Bruno, the little puppy with a big heart, grew up knowing that love and courage could overcome any challenge. Bruno ran through the narrow village paths, his tiny paws kicking up dust as he hurried toward the town center. His heart pounded in his chest, fear and determination driving him forward. His mother, Luna, was hurt, and he needed to find help. Fast. He reached a familiar house near the marketplace, where a young man named Daniel often sat on the steps, feeding stray dogs. Bruno spotted him reading a book under the shade of a mango tree. Without hesitation, Bruno barked loudly, tugging at Daniel's pant leg with his small teeth. Daniel looked down, surprised. "Hey, little guy, what's wrong?" Bruno barked again, stepping back, then running forward as if urging him to follow. Daniel frowned, sensing the urgency in the puppy's eyes. He quickly set his book aside, grabbed his bag, and followed Bruno through the winding paths. The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow over the village. As they neared the forest's edge, Daniel saw Luna lying on the ground, whimpering softly. Her leg was swollen and bruised, and she struggled to lift her head when she saw them. Daniel knelt beside her, carefully inspecting her injury. "You're a brave little one," he murmured to Bruno, who stood close, watching with worried eyes. "Don't worry. I'll take care of her." Gently, Daniel wrapped Luna's injured leg with a cloth from his bag and lifted her in his arms. Bruno followed closely as they made their way back to the village. Inside Daniel's small clinic, he placed Luna on a soft blanket and began treating her wound. He cleaned the dirt from her fur and applied ointment to ease her pain. Bruno sat beside her, licking her face as if to reassure her. Days passed, and Luna slowly began to recover. She could stand again, though she still limped slightly. Bruno never left her side, and Daniel made sure they had plenty of food and water. One evening, as the stars twinkled in the sky, Daniel sat on his porch, watching the two dogs resting nearby. He smiled, reaching out to pat Bruno's head. "You saved your mother, little guy. That takes real courage." Bruno wagged his tail, but suddenly, his ears perked up. A strange rustling came from the bushes near the clinic. His eyes narrowed as he stood up, sniffing the air. Something, or someone, was watching them from the darkness. Bruno let out a low growl, his tiny body tense as he stared at the rustling bushes. Daniel noticed his change in posture and turned his head toward the shadows. The rustling grew louder, and then a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Luna, still weak but alert, struggled to her feet, standing protectively in front of Bruno. Daniel reached for the flashlight beside him and aimed it at the bushes. The beam of light revealed a pair of scruffy dogs, their ribs visible beneath their thin fur. They looked weak and hungry, their eyes darting between Daniel and the two dogs. Bruno hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped forward, sniffing the air. The larger of the two stray dogs let out a small whimper, lowering its head as if pleading for help. Daniel sighed, placing the flashlight down. "Looks like we have more visitors," he murmured, standing up. He went inside for a moment and returned with a bowl of food and fresh water, setting them near the bushes. The two strays hesitated before inching closer, sniffing cautiously before finally eating. Bruno wagged his tail, watching as they devoured the food. Luna, though still weak, relaxed slightly, sensing they were not a threat. Daniel sat back down, observing the scene with a small smile. "You've got a big heart, Bruno," he said. "Just like your mother." As the night deepened, the air grew colder. The two stray dogs curled up near the porch, their stomachs finally full. Bruno lay beside Luna, resting his head against her side, but his ears twitched now and then, alert for any danger. Unknown to them, deep within the village, another pair of eyes watched from the shadows. These eyes were not filled with hunger, but with something else, something far more dangerous. The night was quiet, but Bruno couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping over him. He lifted his head, his ears twitching as he scanned the darkness beyond the clinic. The two stray dogs were fast asleep, and Luna rested peacefully beside him, her breathing steady. Yet something felt wrong. Daniel had gone inside to grab a blanket, leaving the porch dimly lit by the old lantern hanging near the doorway. Bruno stood up and took a cautious step forward, sniffing the air. A strange scent lingered, one he didn't recognize. It wasn't just another dog. It was something else. Then, a sudden noise. A soft shuffle of feet. The faint sound of heavy breathing. Bruno's fur bristled. He let out a low growl, his small body tense. From the corner of the clinic, a shadow moved. Slowly, silently. A tall figure emerged from the darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. Bruno barked sharply, waking Luna and the two stray dogs. Luna struggled to her feet, baring her teeth despite her injury. The stranger took a step closer, and the porch creaked beneath his weight. Daniel, hearing the commotion, rushed out with the blanket still in his hands. His eyes widened as he saw the hooded figure standing near the clinic. "Hey, who's there?" Daniel called out. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned and ran, disappearing into the night. Bruno bolted after it, barking wildly. But the figure was fast, vanishing into the trees before Bruno could catch up. He stopped at the edge of the village, sniffing the air, his heart pounding. The scent was unfamiliar, but something about it made his fur stand on end. Daniel reached him moments later, panting. "Bruno, come back," he said, kneeling beside the puppy. "That wasn't just a lost traveler. Something's not right." Bruno looked up at Daniel, his eyes filled with determination. He knew this wasn't over. Somewhere in the darkness, the hooded figure paused, glancing back toward the village. A low chuckle escaped his lips. "This is only the beginning," he murmured before vanishing into the night. The next morning, the village awoke to an eerie silence. The usual chirping of birds and distant chatter of villagers were missing, as if the air itself held its breath. Bruno sat beside Luna, his eyes scanning the road leading to the forest. The scent from last night still lingered, faint but unsettling. Daniel, troubled by the strange encounter, decided to speak to the village elder. He left early, reminding Bruno to stay close to Luna. But Bruno couldn't sit still. His instincts told him that the hooded figure would return. As the sun climbed higher, a sudden commotion erupted from the marketplace. Bruno's ears perked up. People were shouting. He bolted toward the noise, his tiny paws kicking up dust. Reaching the village square, he saw a group of villagers gathered around something or someone. He wove through the crowd and gasped. A man lay on the ground, unconscious, his clothes torn. His hands were scratched, as if he had been running through the forest. Daniel knelt beside him, checking his pulse. The elder stood nearby, his face pale with worry. Bruno sniffed the air and froze. The scent. It was the same as last night. Suddenly, the injured man's eyes fluttered open. He gasped for breath, gripping Daniel's arm. "They're coming," he croaked. "They're watching from the woods. They want the dogs." The crowd murmured in confusion, but Bruno understood. His fur bristled. Whatever the hooded figure was planning, it wasn't over. A cold wind swept through the village, rustling the trees. In the distance, deep in the forest, hidden eyes watched, waiting for the right moment to strike. Bruno's heart pounded as the man's words echoed through the tense silence of the village square. "They're coming. They want the dogs." The villagers exchanged nervous glances, whispering among themselves.
Who were they?
And why did they want the dogs? Daniel gently placed a hand on the injured man's shoulder. "Who's coming? What do you mean?" The man struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. His face was lined with fear. I was in the forest last night," he stammered. "I saw them. A group of men in hoods. They were whispering near an old cabin. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. They were talking about gathering stray dogs. Something about a ritual, something dark." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Superstitions were deeply rooted in the village, and talk of rituals sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Daniel frowned. "Where exactly did you see them?" The man weakly lifted his hand and pointed toward the northern edge of the forest, beyond the village. "Near the abandoned cabin, the one no one dares to go near." Bruno's ears twitched. The northern forest. That was where he had smelled the strange scent the night before. He turned to Luna, who was standing behind him, her injured legs still stiff, but her eyes sharp with concern. She seemed to understand, too. The elder of the village, a frail man with silver hair, stepped forward. "This is not the first time strange things have happened near that cabin," he said gravely. "Years ago, travelers spoke of shadowy figures lurking in the woods. Dogs would disappear, never to be seen again." A heavy silence settled over the village. Daniel stood up, determination flashing in his eyes. "We can't ignore this. If someone is targeting the dogs, we need to stop them." He turned to Bruno and Luna. "And I think you two are the key." Bruno let out a small bark, wagging his tail.
He was ready.
That night, as the village quieted down, Daniel packed a small bag with supplies, flashlight, rope, bandages, and a small knife for protection. He had decided to investigate the northern forest himself, and Bruno insisted on going with him. Luna, despite her injury, refused to be left behind. As they left the village under the cover of darkness, Bruno's nose twitched at the familiar scent from before. It was stronger now. They were getting closer. The deeper they went into the forest, the thicker the fog became. Shadows stretched and danced between the trees, and the wind whispered through the leaves, making it sound as if unseen figures were murmuring. Then they saw it. The abandoned cabin stood in a small clearing, its wooden walls covered in vines. A dim light flickered from inside. The eerie glow sent a chill down Daniel's spine. He motioned for Bruno and Luna to stay low as they crept closer. Bruno's fur bristled. His nose picked up multiple scents: humans, sweat, something metallic, and dogs. His heart clenched. Were there other dogs trapped inside? Daniel crouched behind a tree, peering through a small crack in the cabin's wooden wall. Inside, Cloaked figures moved around a circle of candles. At the center of the room, a small cage rattled as frightened dogs whimpered from within. Bruno's eyes burned with anger. These were the men who had been stealing the stray dogs.
But why?
One of the hooded figures stepped forward, raising a book in his hands. His voice was low, chanting in a language Bruno didn't understand. But Daniel's breath hitched as he listened. "They're performing some kind of ritual," he whispered. "They think stray dogs carry some kind of power." Bruno growled lowly. He didn't understand the words, but he understood one thing. He had to stop them. Luna, despite her injury, nudged him forward, her eyes filled with silent encouragement. Daniel took a deep breath and tightened his grip on his bag. "All right, Bruno. Let's get those dogs out of there." With that, they moved into the shadows, ready to face the unknown. Bruno's paws moved swiftly and silently across the damp forest floor as he followed Daniel toward the cabin's side entrance. The night air was thick with tension, and the eerie chanting from inside sent a shiver down his spine. Luna limped beside him, her injured leg slowing her down slightly, but her determination remained strong. Daniel pressed himself against the wooden wall of the cabin, peering through a small gap between the planks. Inside, the hooded figures continued their ritual, their deep, rhythmic chanting echoing in the dimly lit room. The cage in the center rattled as the trapped dogs whimpered, their eyes wide with fear. Bruno's fur bristled. Daniel scanned the area, searching for an opening. Then, he spotted something, a rusty lock on the back door, barely holding the wooden planks together. He reached into his bag, pulling out a small metal tool. He had picked it up from the village's blacksmith, just in case. "Bruno, stay close," Daniel whispered as he began working on the lock. Bruno's ears twitched as he listened for any movement inside. Luna stood behind him, her body tense, ready to protect him if needed. A loud click broke the silence. The lock snapped open. Daniel slowly pushed the door open, wincing as the old wood creaked. They slipped inside, staying low. The air smelled of burning wax, damp wood, and something metallic. Blood. Bruno held back a whimper as he saw symbols drawn in red across the floor. Whatever these people were doing, it wasn't just about stealing dogs. The cage sat near the center of the room, surrounded by flickering candles. The dogs inside whimpered as Daniel moved closer. He placed a reassuring hand on the bars. "Shh, it's okay. We're getting you out of here," he whispered. Bruno's ears perked up as one of the hooded figures stepped forward, holding an old, tattered book. His voice rose, chanting faster. The others joined in, their voices blending into a chilling hum. Daniel worked quickly, trying to undo the latch on the cage. But just as he did, one of the dogs let out a loud bark, startled by the noise. The chanting stopped. Every hooded figure turned toward them. Daniel's heart pounded. "Run," he shouted. Bruno barked, urging the trapped dogs to move as Daniel yanked the cage door open. The dogs rushed out, scrambling toward the open door. Luna snapped at the air, trying to push them forward. The figures lunged. One of them grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him back. He struggled, knocking over a candle, which sent flames licking at the dry wood of the cabin floor. Bruno growled and leaped at the hooded man, biting into his sleeve. The man yelped, releasing Daniel, who stumbled backward. "Go, Bruno!"
Get the others out.
Daniel shouted, kicking over another candle. Smoke filled the air as the fire spread quickly. The cabin's old, brittle wood caught fire in seconds, engulfing the room in a warm, flickering glow. Bruno dashed outside, leading the rescued dogs into the forest. Luna followed closely, despite her injury. The other dogs, though weak and frightened, ran as fast as their legs could carry them. Daniel was the last to emerge, coughing from the smoke. Behind him, the hooded figures scrambled to escape as the flames roared higher. The fire consumed the cabin, sending sparks into the night sky. Bruno stopped at the edge of the trees, watching as the figures disappeared into the darkness. The fire had forced them to flee, but Bruno knew this wasn't over. Daniel knelt beside him, catching his breath. He ruffled Bruno's fur with a weak smile. "You did good, buddy." Luna nuzzled Bruno gently, proud of her son's bravery. The rescued dogs huddled together, shaking but safe. The village would take them in, care for them, give them a new home. But deep in the forest, beyond the glow of the dying flames, unseen eyes watched. The hooded figures had vanished into the shadows, but their presence still lingered. Bruno's tail lowered. He had won this battle, but something told him the war was far from over. The night had grown quiet again, but the uneasy feeling that had gripped Bruno's heart didn't fade. As he sat with Luna and the rescued dogs, Daniel spoke in hushed tones, making plans for the morning. They had to return to the village and alert everyone about the strange figures in the forest. But even as Daniel spoke, Bruno's senses remained on edge. The fire still burned in the distance, its glow casting an eerie light over the trees, but Bruno knew the danger wasn't over. The hooded figures had been driven away for now, but he could sense that they would return, and this time, they might be more prepared. Luna nudged him, sensing his unease.
"Don't worry," she said softly.
"We've faced danger before, and we'll face it again, together." Bruno glanced at her, grateful for her strength and wisdom. But deep down, he felt a gnawing worry. The ritual they'd interrupted, the strange power they believed dogs held, it wasn't just a random attack. There was something more at play here. As the group made their way back toward the village, the forest seemed to close in around them. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches casting long shadows. Bruno couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed from behind them. Bruno's heart skipped a beat. He turned quickly, but there was nothing in the shadows, just the dense undergrowth and the soft whisper of the wind. "Did you hear that?" Bruno asked quietly, looking up at Daniel. Daniel paused, listening. His face was tense. "I heard it." "Stay close, Bruno." They pressed on, but the feeling of being followed never left them. Every now and then, the rustling would return, too soft to be an animal, but too deliberate to be the wind. When they reached the outskirts of the village, Daniel breathed a sigh of relief. The village lights flickered in the distance, a welcome sight after the long, tense night. But just as they were about to enter the village, a figure appeared ahead of them, a cloaked figure, standing still at the edge of the trees. Bruno's fur stood on end. The figure didn't move, but Bruno could feel the dark presence radiating from it. Luna growled low in her throat, stepping protectively in front of Bruno. "We've been waiting for you," the figure said, its voice cold and hollow. Daniel's hand went to the small knife at his belt. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure stepped forward, lowering its hood. The face beneath was pale, its features twisted with a strange, unnatural calm. The eyes were dark, too dark, and they seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. "My name is Kieran," the figure said, his voice low and commanding. "I am part of the group you've so rudely interrupted. The dogs you rescued, they are not just pets. They are part of something much greater. You have no idea what you've unleashed." Bruno growled, stepping closer to Daniel. He didn't trust this man, or whatever he was. Kieran smiled, his lips stretching unnaturally wide. "You've only seen a small part of the ritual, the tip of the iceberg. There is much more to come, and you will all play a part in it, whether you want to or not." Luna bared her teeth, ready to fight if necessary. "We won't let you hurt anyone else." Kieran's eyes flickered with amusement. "You think you can stop what's already in motion? The ritual has begun, and it cannot be undone. The dogs, the power they possess, it will all be ours soon." Bruno felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't just about rescuing the dogs, it was about something much darker. Kieran took another step closer, and the air around him seemed to shift. "But don't worry, little dog. You'll see soon enough. The ritual will be completed, and when it is, you will be ours." Before Bruno could react, Kieran vanished into the darkness, leaving only the sound of the wind and the eerie silence that followed. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, his hand still gripping the knife. What was that? Bruno's eyes were filled with determination. That was just the beginning. Luna's voice was calm, but there was an underlying edge to it. "We need to prepare. Whatever this is, it won't stop unless we do." Daniel nodded, his face grim. We'll need help. And we'll need to find out everything we can about these people, their ritual, and why they want the dogs. It's not just about power, there's something else. Something bigger. As they entered the village, Bruno couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Kieran's words haunted him. You'll be ours? The shadow of what was to come loomed over them all. The fight wasn't over, and the true battle had just begun. The village was quiet as Daniel, Luna, and Bruno returned, but there was an underlying tension in the air. The events of the night weighed heavily on them all. Bruno could still feel the chill of Kieran's presence lingering in his fur, and the threat of what was to come hung over them like a dark cloud. Daniel wasted no time. He hurried to the elder's house, the only place in the village where they could gather and make plans. The elder had been warning the villagers about the forest and its dark secrets for years, but no one had ever taken the warnings seriously until now. Bruno, Luna, and the other dogs followed close behind, their paws silent on the cobblestone streets. The villagers had begun to stir, sensing the tension in the air. They glanced at each other, whispering, but said nothing as the small group made its way to the elder's house. Inside, the elder greeted them with a grave expression. His hands shook slightly as he poured them tea, but his eyes were sharp, still full of life despite his age. He had seen things in his long life that others hadn't. What's happened? He asked, his voice low. Daniel explained everything, the hooded figures, the ritual, and Kieran's cryptic words. The elder listened intently, his brow furrowed. When Daniel finished, the elder set down his cup and leaned forward. Are you certain it was Kieran? The elder asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded.
He called himself that.
Said we had no idea what we'd unleashed, that we were part of something bigger. The elder closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Kieran is one of the last of an ancient order. He and his followers have been searching for the power that lies hidden in the forest for generations. It's a dark power, one that has been locked away for centuries. But it's awakening, and they are trying to harness it. Bruno's ears perked up, his senses sharp. Dark power? What could that mean? Luna stepped forward. What does that have to do with the dogs? The elder sighed deeply. The dogs are not ordinary creatures. They have a connection to the ancient magic in these lands. Some of them can sense things, feel the balance of the world shift. And some of them have a greater power within them, one that can be used in the wrong hands to unlock something far more dangerous. Bruno felt a shiver run down his spine. So that's why Kieran wanted the dogs? To use them to unlock some dark power? The elder looked at them all, his gaze firm. You must stop them. If Kieran and his followers complete their ritual, they will bring forth a power that could consume everything. It's not just the forest at stake, it's the entire world. Daniel clenched his fists. How do we stop them? The elder stood slowly, his age showing in the creak of his bones. You need to find the ancient shrine in the forest. It holds the key to sealing the power away, but only those with pure hearts can access it. The dogs, especially Luna and Bruno, are the key. You must get to the shrine before they do. Luna looked at the elder, her eyes fierce. We're ready. We won't let them succeed. The elder nodded gravely. The path to the shrine is dangerous. The forest itself will fight against you, trying to protect what's buried within. But you must go. The ritual must be stopped. Bruno looked at Luna, then at Daniel. He knew their journey was far from over. They had already faced danger. But this was something else entirely. He could feel the weight of the task ahead of them. The forest would fight them, Kieran's followers would try to stop them, and the power they sought was ancient and deadly. But Bruno knew one thing for sure. They couldn't back down. As the elder gave them his blessing and prepared them for the journey ahead, Bruno's tail swished with determination. They had a long road ahead, filled with unknown dangers, but together, they would face whatever came. As they stepped outside, the full moon shone high above the village, casting its silver glow over the darkened forest. Bruno could feel the pull of the unknown, the call of the ancient shrine deep in the woods. It was time to stop Kieran. The forest awaited them, and the fate of everything lay in their paws. The forest loomed ahead, its towering trees swaying in the night wind like ancient sentinels guarding a forgotten secret. Bruno, Luna, and Daniel stood at the edge, their resolve firm despite the chill that crept into their bones. The elder had warned them of the dangers ahead, but there was no turning back now. They had to reach the shrine before Kieran and his followers did. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the familiar sounds of the village fell away, replaced by the eerie silence of the woods. The trees seemed to close in around them, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled hands. The moonlight barely filtered through the thick canopy above, leaving them in near darkness. Bruno's keen senses were on high alert, his nose twitching with the scent of the forest. Every rustling leaf, every crackling twig beneath his paws, felt amplified in the stillness. Luna, though injured, walked beside him with a quiet strength. Daniel held a lantern in one hand, its flickering light casting long shadows on the ground. "Stay close," Daniel whispered, his voice tense. "We don't know what we're walking into." Bruno nodded, his eyes scanning the trees. He could sense something presence, but not in the usual way. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, heavy with an unseen force. Luna's eyes narrowed. "That wasn't a wolf," she said quietly. "It came from somewhere closer. Something else is out there." Bruno's instincts kicked in. He knew they had to move quickly. The forest wasn't just holding its secrets, it was protecting them. They pressed on, following a narrow path that wound deeper into the woods. The air grew colder, the scent of earth and moss mingling with something darker. Bruno's paws felt heavier with each step, the weight of the journey bearing down on him. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time seemed to lose meaning in the darkness of the forest. Then, ahead, they saw a flicker of light. "Look," Daniel whispered, pointing toward a distant clearing. A faint glow shimmered through the trees, casting an otherworldly light. Bruno's heart raced. The shrine. They had found it. The clearing was surrounded by ancient stone pillars, each one carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. At the center of the clearing stood a large, stone altar, weathered by time but still radiating a power that made the hairs on Bruno's back stand on end. Suddenly, a howl echoed through the trees, sharp and distant. It sent a shiver down Bruno's spine. His ears pricked up. Luna stepped forward, her eyes focused on the altar. "This is it," she said, her voice low. "This is where the ritual will either be completed or stopped." Before they could move further, a rustling sound came from the trees.
"Kieran."
Bruno's ears flicked toward the noise, his muscles tensing. He could smell them now, more figures, cloaked in darkness, stepping into the clearing from all sides. Kieran's followers. They were closing in. Daniel stepped in front of Bruno and Luna, his hand gripping the knife at his side. "We don't have much time. We need to act fast." But just as they prepared to move, Kieran's voice rang out, cold and commanding. "You're too late," he said, stepping into the clearing, his eyes gleaming with malice. His cloak fluttered in the wind, and behind him, his followers moved with an eerie synchronicity. "The power is already awakening. You think you can stop what has already begun?" Bruno growled, his eyes fixed on Kieran. "We'll stop you," he barked, his voice filled with determination. Kieran chuckled darkly. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The power inside that shrine will reshape everything. I will unlock it. We will unlock it, and there will be no stopping us." Luna growled, her fur standing on end. "You're wrong. This power doesn't belong to you, or anyone. It's meant to be sealed away, forever." Kieran's eyes flickered with amusement. But that's where you're mistaken, my dear dog. You are the key. Your connection to the shrine, to the magic, it's what will allow us to claim it." Bruno stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had a bad feeling about this. Kieran's followers were surrounding them, cutting off any escape. They were trapped. "Bruno," Luna said softly, her voice steady. "We need to get to the altar. It's the only way to stop him." But before they could make a move, Kieran raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to warp. A dark, shadowy force pulsed through the ground, sending a wave of energy toward them. The force knocked Bruno and Luna back, sending them crashing to the ground. Daniel barely managed to stay on his feet. He drew his knife, preparing for whatever Kieran would throw at them next. Kieran smirked, his eyes gleaming. It's over. The ritual is already in motion. Bruno struggled to rise, his body aching. But as he looked toward the altar, he saw something else. The stone altar was glowing now, the symbols carved into it pulsing with an intense light. The magic was awakening, and it was calling to him. But Bruno knew something else, too. This power was not meant for destruction. It was meant for balance. And he, Luna, and Daniel were the only ones who could protect it. With renewed strength, Bruno sprang to his paws.
We're not done yet.
And as the battle for the shrine began, the forest itself seemed to stir, as if it, too, was watching, waiting for the moment the balance would tip. The clearing had become a battlefield. Bruno's muscles burned from the force of the dark energy that surrounded them. Luna stood beside him, growling low, her body braced for the next wave of attack. Daniel, clutching his knife, was ready to fight until the very end. But the odds were against them. Kieran's followers surrounded them, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, their movements fluid and synchronized. Bruno's heart raced. The ritual was near its peak. The glowing altar pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and he could feel the pull of it, calling to him, tempting him. But he knew that if Kieran and his followers gained control of it, the world would change forever. Kieran raised his hand again, and the air seemed to tremble. The power is mine, he declared, his voice filled with triumph. The magic of the forest will bow to me. All of you will serve me, whether you like it or not. Bruno felt his paws sink into the ground as the energy surged around him. His body felt heavy, as if the very earth was trying to pull him into the depths of the shrine. But deep inside, a spark of resistance burned. This wasn't just about stopping Kieran. It was about protecting the forest, protecting the balance that kept everything in harmony. Luna barked sharply, snapping Bruno out of his thoughts. We can't let him win, Bruno. We have to act now. Bruno's mind raced. The altar. There's something about the altar. He had seen the way it pulsed, the way the symbols had glowed. It wasn't just a place of power, it was a key. A key that could unlock something greater, something that could stop Kieran's dark magic for good. But how could they reach it in the face of such overwhelming power? In that moment, something within him clicked. Bruno knew what he had to do. He had to trust in the forest, in the ancient magic that connected them all. The dogs, the forest, the balance. It wasn't just about brute strength. It was about unity, about connecting with the heart of the forest itself. With a bark of determination, Bruno raced forward, leaping over the shadowy tendrils that reached out to trap him. Luna followed closely, her speed and agility matching his own. Together, they made their way toward the altar, but Kieran's followers moved to intercept them. Daniel, sensing their plan, fought valiantly to keep the followers at bay, his knife flashing in the dim light as he struck at the advancing figures. Go, Bruno. You have to stop him. Bruno didn't hesitate. He felt the altar drawing him closer, its energy thrumming beneath his paws. He could almost hear the heartbeat of the forest itself, pulsing in time with his own. Luna was right beside him, her presence a constant reminder that they were in this together. When they reached the altar, the power around them surged, pushing them back with an almost physical force. But Bruno stood his ground. He could feel the ancient magic coursing through him, connecting him to the very heart of the forest. He placed his paws on the stone, feeling the warmth of the symbols beneath him. The altar reacted, its glow intensifying as if recognizing his presence. Bruno closed his eyes, allowing the energy to flow through him, guiding him. He didn't fight it. Instead, he let it fill him, becoming one with the forest's power. A low growl rumbled from Kieran as he watched the scene unfold, his eyes narrowing with anger. No, he shouted, his voice laced with desperation. You cannot stop this. It is mine. But Bruno didn't falter. He felt Luna's steady presence beside him, felt the weight of their mission, the lives they were protecting. As he concentrated, the magic began to shift, the symbols on the altar glowing brighter, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the beat of Bruno's heart. Suddenly, the earth beneath them trembled. The wind howled, shaking the trees, and the energy that had once been dark and oppressive began to shift. The forest reacted, fighting back against the twisted magic Kieran had tried to unleash. The ground cracked, and from the very earth, a brilliant light shot up, engulfing the altar and surrounding them all. Kieran screamed, his followers stumbling back, shielding their eyes from the blinding light. The dark magic was unraveling, its hold on the forest and the altar breaking. Bruno felt the power surge through him, and for a moment, it was overwhelming. But then he realized he wasn't alone. Luna was beside him. Daniel was fighting fiercely to protect them, and the forest itself was on their side. Together, they were stronger than Kieran could ever be. The light grew brighter, and with a final burst of energy, it exploded outward, sending a shockwave that knocked Kieran and his followers to the ground. The power of the shrine had been restored, its balance returned. When the light faded, the clearing was still. The energy that had once pulsed with dark magic was now calm, serene. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, the tension easing from the air. Kieran lay sprawled on the ground, his eyes wide with shock and fear. His followers were disoriented, but they didn't get up. The magic had been broken, and they were powerless now. Bruno, exhausted but triumphant, stepped away from the altar. Luna nudged him gently, her eyes filled with pride. Daniel approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse but filled with relief. Bruno looked back at the altar, the ancient power now dormant, its magic sealed once again. He knew this victory wasn't just his, it was theirs, the dogs, the forest, and everyone who fought to protect the balance. But even as they turned to leave, Bruno couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. There would always be forces out there seeking to tip the scales, to disturb the balance. But he knew one thing for certain. He would be ready. Together, they would protect the forest, its secrets, and the world they all shared. The journey home was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. They had won, but Bruno couldn't shake the feeling that Kieran's defeat was only the beginning. The forest had been saved, for now, but something deep inside him told him the battle for balance was far from over. As they made their way back through the forest, the once threatening trees now seemed to whisper in relief, their branches swaying gently as if bowing to the triumph they had all shared. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft shadows on the ground. But Bruno knew that peace was fleeting, and there was still much left to be done. Luna walked beside him, her body tired but her spirit unbroken. Daniel was not far behind, his movements cautious but determined. Every step was a reminder of the battle they had fought and the sacrifices they had made. They had stopped Kieran, but there were always others, always those who would seek to disrupt the balance. As they approached the village, the familiar sight of the rooftops brought a sense of relief. The people of the village had no idea what had truly transpired in the forest, and it would be better that way, for now. The fewer who knew about the dark magic hidden in the woods, the better. The forest had chosen them to protect its secrets, and it was a responsibility Bruno didn't take lightly. When they entered the village, the streets were quiet, save for a few villagers tending to their evening tasks. They offered nods and smiles, unaware of the dangers that had just been averted. Daniel gave them a reassuring wave, and Luna barked softly, her tail wagging as if nothing had happened. But Bruno could feel the weight of the past few days pressing down on them all. The elder had been waiting for them by the village square, his old eyes sharp with understanding. He didn't ask for details, he didn't need to. The way Bruno carried himself, the calmness in Luna's eyes, the quiet confidence in Daniel's steps, he knew they had succeeded. "Did you stop him?" the elder asked simply. Bruno nodded, his gaze unwavering. "We stopped him. But I don't think the danger is over." The elder's face grew solemn. "You're right. The forest is powerful, but there are always those who seek to misuse its magic. Kieran was but one. You've sealed the shrine for now, but there will be others who try to awaken what should remain hidden. Bruno's heart tightened. The elder's words rang true. He had felt it, the pull of the magic, the dark energy that sought to corrupt. As long as that power existed, there would always be those who would try to harness it for their own gain. You've done well, the elder continued. But your journey isn't over. You've protected the balance for now. But the forest is a living, breathing entity, and it has chosen you. You're its guardians now, Bruno, Luna, and Daniel. You must remain vigilant. Luna's ears perked up, and Bruno met her gaze. She understood. They had a responsibility now, one that went far beyond what they had ever imagined. We'll protect it, Bruno said, his voice steady. We won't let anyone disrupt the balance again. The elder smiled, a rare expression for the old man. I believe you will. The forest has chosen wisely. As they walked away from the elder's house, Bruno couldn't help but glance back at the trees in the distance. The forest had tested them, had pushed them to their limits, but they had passed. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. They would face them together. And whatever darkness tried to rise again, they would be ready. As the days passed, the village returned to its quiet rhythm, though a new sense of vigilance hung in the air. The villagers didn't know the full extent of what had happened in the forest, but Bruno, Luna, and Daniel carried the weight of the secret, understanding that their lives would never be the same. The forest had chosen them, and they were bound to it, protectors of its magic and its balance. Though the immediate threat of Kieran and his followers had been vanquished, the forest was still alive, its ancient power flowing beneath the earth, its secrets waiting. Bruno could feel it in his bones, the pulse. Luna barked softly, her tail wagging gently. Bruno smiled at her. She had always been his strength, his reminder that even in the darkest times, they could find the light. The stars began to twinkle above them as night fell, and Bruno felt the ancient connection between himself, Luna, and the forest. He had become more than just a dog. He had become part of something much larger, something timeless. In the distance, the forest seemed to call to him, its whispers carried by the wind. Bruno knew that as long as he drew breath, he would protect it. He would protect the balance, no matter the cost. And so, under the vast, starry sky, with Luna by his side and Daniel standing strong beside them, Bruno made a silent promise to the forest, to the land, and to himself. This is my purpose. This is my path. And as they walked back toward the village, the ancient forest behind them, Bruno knew that whatever came next, they were ready. The journey had been long, and the future was uncertain, but together, they would face whatever darkness threatened the balance. Together, they would guard the secrets of the forest. The end.